This hot, this the spot. There it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and laughter, stream right to you from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast for creators of any variety. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, the last regular episode of the year. I can't believe it's already the end of 2017. Gonna have a comedy shop talk episode talking about the year and all the great things that have happened. But today's episode is a great one to end on, of having guests on the show. Great interview I have with comedian from Atlanta, Lace Larrabee. She's awesome, and you're going to be able to tell how awesome she is by listening to this chat that we have. I met her when I still lived in South Carolina, and she is just awesome. She's a great performer and a really awesome person. You instantly like her because she is cool and kick ass. And she's just an awesome person, and I'm very excited to be sharing this chat with you. We have a really good discussion about what women face in comedy and a lot of things just about society. I think it's a really good chat, and I think it's good to continue the discussion about what women are facing, simply because who knows what's going to make you get it a little more and start helping make things better for marginalized people. So let's have that chat right now. Here it is, my chat with Lace Larrabee.
New York is one of those love or hate kind of places like LA. So,
oh yeah,
you know, you gotta really be into it to want to stay. One of my best friends from high school. Yeah, you love it instantly. Yeah, well, I think a lot of people do, and then it's just funny. One of my best friends from high school. He went to Yale, and then he met a guy, and they've been together for, I think, probably like 11 or 12 years now. And so they've moved to Manhattan around that time, right? Like 11 or 12 years ago. And they've lived there ever since, and they are so sick of it. And they used to be. I think the more settled though you get, and the more you kind of crave things like a yard and, you know, you just want to be away from the concrete and the hustle and bustle and the subways and shit. I mean, it's so, what's the word? I don't know. I mean, New York is exciting. I love it. I love to visit, but I'm always curious what people think about living there, because everyone I know has drastic opinions of living there. They either love it or they're waiting any second to get a reason to get out. So,
yeah, I mean, I could see that eventually, but it's changing for me. It's like, first when we moved here, or right before we moved here, I was saying, let's at least give it a year. Even if we end up hating it, let's just give it a shot for a year. And the more I've been here, the more I've been like, oh, we're already at 8 months, 9 months. Like, that's a year is probably not enough time. And
well, that's a good sign. It's going by fast. That's good.
Yeah. And then the more time goes by, the more I'm like, well, I almost can't see myself not living here. You know, like, I don't know.
Oh, well, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, but my mom's in South Carolina, so I don't like that part of you know, being that I've not lived this far away from my family ever.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely haven't. I mean, Atlanta is as far away as I've ever been from my family, and they're just in South Georgia. So, I mean, yeah, I've never, but I love getting the hell out and coming back. I mean, it's always fun to leave. But, yeah, living permanently, no, never been out that far. But, yeah, I know. One day, though, maybe, at least, you know, the dream, right? The dream's the coast-to-coast living. Isn't that it? Like one on each side, and
being able to live in a couple different places. Yeah, that's. I mean, my brother lives in LA. I don't know if I would want to live in LA, but I mean, I know I would like at least the warm weather, but not the fires. But
yeah, it's like, oh, we love how warm, and oh my God, it's too warm.
Yeah.
We're on fire, literally.
There's someone I know who was going back and forth from Atlanta and New York, and
Which person? Because I probably know them.
Her name is Erica Grace Powell, but she just got married, and I forget her.
Oh, yeah. No.
Married name. But she was from Greenville, and then moved to... No. She moved to Nashville. Going back and forth from Nashville to New York for gigs. But she did that for a little bit when she was living in Greenville, and that would be great if I could go back and forth, like often. Because then, if you have the money to travel, and then you're getting the work that you want to get in New York, then it's like best of both worlds.
That's the dream, right? I mean, that's what I want. I mean, I got to live that a little bit this past year. Was awesome because I got to go. I had multiple reasons to get out of town. So I was booked in LA to do a show, like a TV show. So I got to go to LA, and I was booked. And the reason I got that is because I happened to be booked in Idaho to close out a gig. And so I went out to Boise, and then I was like, well, I'm going to be that close. So I'll, just go to LA too. If I'm going to be out that far, I might as well. And I did that. Then I got the audition for the thing, and then I got called out to come back for the thing. And so I had all these reasons to keep traveling that far, and God, that felt so good. It's not a whole lot of money, and you're pretty much breaking even, and all that. But just the reason to just to have the work and needing to go out there, and just that feeling of I've got to go to LA for work, like that. God, I loved it. I loved it, and I want that. And I want the same for New York. I would kill to have reasons to go up there and not just go to waste money to hope that 5 people see me at a mic.
Right. Right. I mean, that's always the thing with comedy, when especially in my position. I mean, you're obviously headlining and doing really established gigs. But from where I was coming from and the position I was in, and then moving here, I was not necessarily a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't a small fish in a small pond, but also I wasn't like someone who was clearly on this trajectory, in my opinion, that it wasn't like Rory Scovel, like going to DC to New York.
Right.
He had established himself so much in the business world of comedy. So when I come up here, then it's just okay, well, what are the good rooms? And then a lot of the good rooms now are things where you really just have to have gotten some people's attention to get on. So I'm kind of relegated at this point to only getting on some open mic, and who knows how long that can take for it to matter.
Ugh, gosh, years. You got to put, and see, those are the things that terrify me, is the starting over again, and the years that you have to put in, especially, I don't know. And not that it is different, but it is. I mean, we can act like it's not, but it is different, male and female. It's just totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, because, whether we act like everything's fine, because it's 2017, everything's better. But, I mean, women do still have more of a shelf life just in the business, because there are still so many older, antiquated ideas still in the business, because those people are still around. And when those people are gone, maybe it'll be a little different. But I can't act like those old managers and agents and casting directors don't exist, because they do. And they want women to not be any older than 30. I mean, they just don't.
Yeah. It sucks. I mean, and I understand that when I go to mics here, for the most part, they are very friendly to women. They are very supportive.
Oh, yeah.
They're not being creepy, but those aren't the people who are calling the shots in the business.
Those aren't thank you. That is the point I try to make. When people look at you cross-eyed, confused, what? What do you mean? We love women. We always have women on our show. It's your show is not going to pay me $1 million an episode. That's not the thing. I want the big thing, and the big thing, I need to be 20 years old again for the big thing.
That's why,
I can do comedy for the rest of my life, sure. But that's not necessarily the only thing I want to do. I want comedy that leads to a sitcom, that leads to a talk show. That I want the Ellen trajectory. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And that's not that easy anymore. I mean, it's just not. There's too many people doing comedy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I know a lot of people will say it's not easy across the board, but we have to admit that it's harder for women. And it's because the people who are calling the shots are still misogynists that are getting rooted out. We're still having to find out who these people. Look at this year. That's
exactly what I was about to say. Look at the Perv Purge of 2017. We can't act like these people don't exist. And that's only the tippy top of the iceberg. And those are only the big names. Think of all the nameless people that make decisions that we don't even know, who get to hide in the shadows.
Yeah.
And think of, and really, I mean, you know the business, you know how it works. It's not even those big name producers necessarily. It's a lot of times it's the sponsors that call the final shots. So I know as an actor, when I go to an audition and the client's in the room, the client is not an agent or is not an industry professional. They literally just work for Hardee's or whatever. They're just a higher up and they're the ones going, yeah, that's the look we want. They don't know shit about talent. That's how you can sit and watch TV and go, oh my God, that was the worst commercial I've ever seen. How is it on television? Well, it's because the company, the client made the final decision.
Yeah.
And they picked that terrible actor just because they liked the way they looked.
Oh yeah.
That's how it fucking works. So how do we root out those people? We can't. So if misogyny exists there, then
crazy.
I mean, it's so impossible to. But anyway, yes, there are big moves.
It'll change, but it's like people are looking for the big guns right now, and it is going to be a while. I mean, we can't.
Yep.
I think obviously a huge precedent, and it happened this year, and a big turning point in our culture and our society. But there are a lot of casting directors who are doing wrong stuff, even if it's not on the level of, say, a Harvey Weinstein. There's still like some racist. We're calling out a lot of sexual predators, but there are still like misogynists and racists, and homophobes,
racism and stereotype. Just the stereotyping alone that happens. I mean, you can open up any audition and read the side, or just read the description, and just be appalled and be and that. I mean, I'm sure
I've heard a lot about it, and I've seen every time I see. Not every time, but so many times when I see the casting call for a black male, it's always suave, smooth.
Oh, yeah.
It's always like the stereotypes of, like, I don't know, the 80s or something.
Exactly. It is. Thank you. It is totally the 80s. And the way they cast, I mean, oh, my gosh. It's the same. I mean, obviously, same thing for black women. I hear that all the time, from all my, I mean, it's just that I know a lot of black women in the Atlanta scene that did both, right? That did acting and comedy, and it will blow your mind at the things people will say to them in casting. I mean, it's and if they want the work, they have to put up with it. It's bullshit.
Yeah,
it's bullshit. The whole sassy thing and no, have more attitude.
Yeah, I am amazed. As long as people have been complaining about the stereotypes of black women, I'm amazed at how often this year I have seen sassy black women.
Yep.
I won't name a show, but I won't name the show out because I really do like the show and I like a lot of the people involved with it. But there's a black actress on there who was essentially given very little for the character, and a few of her reads have just been like sassy black woman, essentially. And there's another show that I had seen her on previously and didn't even recognize her because she's so different in both roles. But in the other show,
because she was herself. She was herself in one, and then she was this ridiculous character in another.
The thing that I saw first was a well-written part for a black woman, and it's actually like specifically talking about not doing the stereotypes and stuff. And then like the second thing was not super stereotypical, but there was enough of the like sassy black woman there that I was like, what is this bull crap? And I looked her up on IMDb and was like, holy crap, she's a woman who did that amazing work in this other show that I just saw. Just like, it's terrible. I think it was just like they put the stuff that they put in the show was just like, oh, she shows a lot of sass here. Strong black woman. I was like, come on.
Come on. There are so many. There's so many layers to every human. Stop it with the stereotypical. I mean, it's so sad. But that is a whole other thing that needs to be tackled. It's like right now we're dealing with, like you said, I mean, right now, yes, we're trying to root out the misogyny or the misogynists, and well, I mean, the misogyny itself is going to take a long time, because that's it's going to be a while. But we got to tackle one thing at a time. It's like right now we're focused on half the population. We got to fix something that's affecting more than half the population, actually, because it's not like men don't receive the same thing. They get it too, and on a maybe a quieter scale. No one ever talks about it, but it's happening to men, but definitely happens to all women. And then the next big, hopefully the next big purge, I think, is going to be the racism in the business. And in all business, in all businesses, because it's there. It's there. It's the same kind of thing. It's sometimes it's overt and obvious, and sometimes it's very quiet. And it's not just in the South by any means.
No,
it is all over the country, and it is everywhere from the entertainment industry down. I mean, the people that you would think would be the most open-minded and progressive, I mean, those are some of the worst. And I mean, that's got to be the next thing. And hopefully, I love the commentary that's going on right now on social media after last night, after Roy Moore losing to Doug Jones. And I love every single, they just keep showing the demographics, the voter demographics over and over and over.
It was like 97% black women. 97% of black women voted for Doug Jones.
Yes. And then it goes 93 or something of black men, and then it's like, embarrassing numbers of white women and white men. But still, the white men and women made up such a huge part of the vote, right? It was like 30-something each. And then, but it's
I think it was like 62% of white women maybe voted for Roy Moore. But I could be
probably
wrong.
No, I think you're that's what I'm saying. Only 30-something% voted for Doug Jones. But then, oh God, it's disgusting. It is, but I have so many opinions about all of that.
It was like,
it was too close. It's still way too close. It wasn't close enough for a recount.
Person difference.
Oh my God,
it's like, that's sad.
But I'm sorry, any win though in Alabama, being from Georgia, any win like that in Alabama is a huge deal. I mean, I know that from the rest of the world is looking in and they're going, okay, but it was still too close. And it's like, you don't understand. That is a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's so much that needs to get rooted out. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And I didn't notice until I moved up here some of the sort of, maybe some of the like, I guess what people would call microaggressions that I was experiencing down south in like friend groups from people.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was kind of like, oh, you know what? Now that I'm like not there, I can sort of see how maybe like how this person was sort of looking at me like, oh, he's going to complain about racism again, or just like not being, that was just like an attitude that I got from a few people about, if I was talking about anything. And some of that was overt at the time and I knew it was going on, but then some stuff I'm noticing in retrospect.
Because now you're in another climate. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, it's funny. Here I am acting shocked, but now that I put myself in your shoes and I'm thinking of myself just deciding to define myself. I've never been afraid of defining myself as a feminist. I never really was afraid of it. Really up until, because I always did, ever since I was a little kid, and I learned what feminism was in school. And they taught you about the women of the 70s and 60s and who started to stand up and go against the grain and, everything. And it was, and getting to work and all equal fighting for all. And it was so amazing to me. And not one bit of that sounded negative, nor did it sound like something that I didn't want to be associated with. So from an early age, I was like, that's me. I'm that. I want equality for everybody. And I lived in a household where my mom worked both my parents worked hard, but my mom especially never stopped working. She still is like pretty much the breadwinner in our house and always has been. I was just like, that's a cool thing. It's because of these women that my mom, provides for us the way that she does. And I always thought it was beautiful, right? And I'd always, like I said, define myself that way. Never had a problem with it. And up until recently, and I still don't have a problem with it, but I've noticed such negative feedback from people, especially on social media, and even in some conversations where I start to like edit myself when I'm talking because I don't want to use the word feminist too much around certain friends or certain family members because they immediately...
They think of a specific different thing than what you are.
Yeah, and they're demonizing it, and I'm like, what the hell? How did this happen? Where did this come from? Like, that's a positive, great thing. We should all... It's certainly
gotten way more complicated over the years. Because when I was growing up, I feel like the only time I heard feminism was in a negative context, and I was hearing it in the media, not at home, but I would hear like someone would the word feminazi was being thrown around so much 20 years ago. And now the issue is that it's almost like Christianity or some religion where there are a number of different denominations. And so you have all these different interpretations of what feminism is, but then also people will point out it's almost like there are like some people like Lena Dunham, she wouldn't maybe call herself a specific kind of feminist, but other people are saying she falls into this kind of category. And then, it's like people are categorizing feminism now. And so now if you say feminist, it's like, well, I don't know how the person hearing this is going to interpret that.
Right.
It's all now, there's so many different negative...
You have to... Yeah, and you have to think about who you're talking to when you choose to use the word feminist if you're describing yourself, because are you talking to someone who now thinks that all feminists are radical feminists and, and hate men, or it's like they automatically go to that extreme end of it. And it's like, are some of them that... You're exactly right comparing it to like a religion or even a political party now, because it's the same kind of thing, right? There's obvious drastic ends of the spectrum, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, I hate all Republicans, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, there's a crazy end of them. But if you grew up in a rural area, you probably know a lot of Republicans, and you know a lot of good ones who honestly just care about, they really just care about like taxes or, so they're not the toothless, Confederate flag waving morons who vote against their own interests.
Right.
By being
or just the Trumpsters or just the Paul
that's
Ryans.
A whole other group.
It's like those are 3-4 different types of Republicans.
Absolutely. I mean, and there's so many different types, and so it's the same thing. It works the same way. You can't categorize, but it's sad to me that something so positive, that's something that's supposed to be so positive, is associated with such negative things, because I was always so proud of that. But I get what you're saying about, you worry, this person's going to think I'm complaining about racism again. I think it's the same thing. Is this person going to think I'm just complaining about, equal rights again or whatever? And it's like, I should be able to. You should be on my team.
Yeah.
Everywhere, whether I'm home in Georgia or whether I'm in LA working or wherever I am, we should all be on the same team with this. Why are we fighting?
I mean, that is kind of one of the difficult things, I think, because, something we both probably talk about in comedy are these sort of struggles. And there are certainly people like, why do they have to talk about it? Or why do they have so much material on that subject? And, it's kind of like, well, am I saying something that's wrong, or are you like, or are you tired of hearing it?
Because it makes you uncomfortable because you know that you're guilty.
Right. It's like, why are you tired of hearing about it? If someone kept telling me how great pizza was, I wouldn't be like, enough about pizza because I like pizza. Right?
Exactly.
Why, if I would only get tired of something if I didn't like it or agree with it.
Yep. So, you just described being a female comedian, because after a show, plenty of people would have no problem coming up and saying, hey, I really enjoyed your set. I could have done without the blank, blank, blank. And you're like, well, I don't care. Then don't come back. Don't listen to me. Don't follow me online. And why did you feel the need to come up and say that to me? What good does that do? Just to prove your point and let me...
more than anybody.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah.
And
I watch it happen online. I mean, you can literally just go to YouTube, type in any comedian's name, male or female, look at the comments underneath and start comparing what people say to women. I mean, if people don't believe that that's a true thing, if there's anybody out there who's like, bullshit, I get crazy things said to me after shows too. And it's like, oh, you do? Just go to YouTube. See. You'll see.
It's
real
not
easy.
As frequent. Like I was telling some friends that someone after a show, a woman grabbed my butt. And
oh, really?
Yeah. But the thing is, like, that was one time.
Right.
Ever. That after a show in the world of comedy where someone did something disrespectful and weird towards me. But women deal with crap like that way more.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that it's okay that it happens to men. I'm just saying it's wrong that it happens to women and men, but we do have to acknowledge that it happens to women more.
More, right? Exactly.
And I get,
there's nothing wrong
with admitting get tired of it, of people saying, like, getting annoyed with women talking about it. It's like, well, if it happened to you that much, you would for damn sure talk about it.
Absolutely. It's like when people try to have the conversation about, Black Lives Matter, and then people go, well, what? The same thing happens to white people. And it's like, not at the rate that it is happening to black people.
Yeah, and then they try to like make some sort of math thing of like, well, there are technically more white men that it's happening to than black men, but it's if you look at the percentage, it's about the rate.
Look at the percentages.
Like,
exactly.
Like, it's happening to like 10% of white men, and it's happening to like 30% of black. Like it's those aren't great numbers. I'm tossing those numbers out because I'm not looking at the stats right now, but. I looked at them, and it was sort of like this, this crazy difference.
Oh, it is. It's drastic, and for us not to realize that. Yeah, it's like, what good are you doing when you try to play devil's advocate, right? When someone's trying to have these conversations that are so important to have. It's like when 90 whatever. I'm going to stop trying to do percentages because I'm not a statistician, but I'm not, when women try to say, this is happening to us, all of us, me too, when we're all doing it, and then a small portion of men come forward and say it, what good does it go? Well, women, your plight doesn't matter because we have the same plight. No, just join forces. Why can't you just say both things exist? How hard is that?
Right.
It's like with the dangerous cops and everything. It's yes, we can all see that it happens to multiple people. But what's wrong with that? You don't have to say Black Lives Matter is not important to talk about,
right?
Or because it happens. No, it is important. Plus this. We can have the conversation because there are bad cops, and there is systemic racism, and there are problems. Now, are all cops bad? No, absolutely not. More of them are good than bad, but we've got to talk about the bad ones. The same thing with the entertainment industry. Is everyone in the entertainment industry racist and misogynist and wants to grope young women? No, absolutely not. But a handful of them are. Well, a big handful of them are, and we've got to get rid of them, and we've got to talk about it.
Yeah,
it's like we can have the conversation. You can talk about both things. One, they can both exist. They are not mutually exclusive. There's our system is flawed. Our justice system is flawed. Our entertainment system is fucked up. So many industries need help, and you can talk about all of it at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other.
Exactly. And also, it's just kind of like the way the conversations play out, particularly online, is just weird. And I'm surprised at how organized people are, even people who are just sort of reactionary and knee-jerk are like, it's like everyone has their catchphrases and their hashtags.
Yep.
And,
the go-to phrase.
Name for everything.
Phrase. Yep.
Yeah, there's like so much thought and almost intellect being put in to really toxic or unhealthy or even stupid points of view.
Yep. Because it's fun, and they also feel like they have a team behind them, right? I mean, that's the kind of the whole thing with the uprising of Trump was that I watched it. We all watched it happen before our eyes, which was all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, cool, all these people are on my team. So I can go on to a completely moderate post, a normal post that maybe, is leaning a little liberal in their viewpoint or whatever, and I can go in the middle, and I'm saying this from my personal experience, right? This happened to me over and over and over during the whole election year, which was I would make some sort of a post, not being radical in any kind of way, but definitely, moderate, liberal leaning, and then I'd have all of these other, artsy type friends of mine all come in, all this diverse, conversation happening, and then one of these people that I know that were all on board with Trump would jump in, and they felt empowered to do so, even though they're in the midst of a group that they do not belong in or agree with, and they would just jump in and say the most negative, crazy, devil's advocate type stuff, and they're fine with it. They have this strength because they have been told that the majority of the country is on board with Trump. Because that's the way the media would make you think, right? So here they come going, well, I'm right now. But now, 2-3 years ago, would those same people would they have felt emboldened to say the kind of stuff that they said to me or said to my friends without even knowing who they were? Absolutely not.
I don't think so at all. I mean, I think we saw Charlottesville because people are emboldened.
Yep, absolutely. That's what happened, though. They all of a sudden they've got this team around them that even if it's imagined, they have they all of a sudden have this new power, and that just and that's you're exactly right. All of the effort and passion that they've just put into having these ridiculous reactionary comments and it all came from that, and it all was breeding underground. We didn't know it was happening because it wasn't happening in front of our eyes in our social media. It was happening in these deep threads and these other, Reddit and all these other places that I don't go to.
Right.
But
I mean, it's like fringe stuff and underground stuff.
Fringe, that's exactly.
Those ideals came up to the forefront and people got emboldened. What I find fascinating makes it sound like I think it's a good thing, but I don't. I'm just like so perplexed as to why there are so many men online who feel that have always seemed to feel emboldened to say the weird stuff that they say to women. I see it on social media all the time where, if I'm following a celebrity, the stuff that people say to them in the comments openly is so crazy. Like there was especially celebrity. That's where you really see it because you see
people
such sexual stuff that people are saying, and it's like, why would you say that at all? But especially in front of everybody.
Yep, because people don't think that people don't see celebrities as humans, right? They don't see the human side of them, so they just think that they are a product that has been delivered to them and they can do with what they'd like because they think they pay, to watch them on TV, they pay to watch them in film, so that they own them, right? So then they can just treat them however they'd like. They're a commodity. They're not an actual humanized person. But it's the same thing with comics. They see you on stage and they're like, oh, well, you deserve whatever I can say to you afterward because you like this or you put yourself out here for this. So this is what you get. Right. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely see, and not the same thing. I mean, I'm never, no blanket statements here, but, I don't think that only men say odd things to people because women definitely do too. But same thing,
but it's
way
just
more,
not the same.
It's not the same, and it's way more men than it is women who do it. And I honestly, I think it's two things. I think it is learned, and I think it maybe some of it is biological. I don't know.
Like the testosterone or something is.
Well, and I just think that I just, as a woman and having more female friends than anything, I think that it's in women's nature, and I could be wrong that it's nature. It could totally be a learned social thing, but I do think that I think we analyze things a little bit more, right? I don't think that we have knee-jerk reactions as often as men do. Not that we don't, I definitely do, but I think that we just analyze things, right? So we question what's about to come out of our mouth more often than not. And we sit if we make a decision, and maybe that is from when you have children, and you're protecting your children, and you have to multitask. You have to think of multiple things before you make a decision because you've got to consider everyone around you, right? So you're always considering other people and other people's feelings and all this. And then men just don't. I mean, they just don't. They just react and they just say what they want, and no one's ever stopped them. But when little girls are little, right, they go, okay, now don't say it. Watch your words. Don't be too loud. Don't be too this. Don't be too angry. Like, don't blah, blah, blah. You know, be quiet. Say sorry. Say this.
Yeah.
And this doesn't,
The
it doesn't happen
patriarchy then.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely that. And then men just aren't taught that. Men are taught, speak up, say something, you know.
Go for it.
Like, in class, I mean, you watch it throughout school. I mean, boys don't raise their hand. Boys will just blurt out. Girls will sit and raise their hand and wait. You know, and it happens all the way through college, and it happens into the corporate world. It happens. I mean, it's a systemic thing, and it keeps going. But I think, and that just bleeds over. It bleeds over into social media, where men just blurt shit out because they either think that they're right or they think you deserve to hear what they say. They didn't put any thought into what they said. Yeah. And I'm not talking about all men. I'm talking about the men who do this. The men who write graphic, sexually explicit things or hateful things, you know, to people that they don't know. I mean, good Lord. The stuff that you see online is terrifying. And do I think porn has something to do with it? Absolutely.
It's gotten worse, but yeah. There is so much of just like how the world is designed to like favor men more than it is designed to favor women. I mean, that's just like the constructs that were created. It's just kind of like how everything is kind of built more for right-handed people than for left-handed people.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of dynamic that I'm talking about in especially our society, I would say. Well, I guess there are others or things might be worse, but for women in some respects. Yeah, I guess if we go in the same.
But here's the thing. I hate that argument because I find myself in those conversations a lot where I'm like, yeah, well, you know, it's still, even though we think everything's great and well, there's still a lot of work that we need to do here. And then somebody will pipe up and go, would you rather be living in Saudi Arabia or whatever, you know, and they'll bring up something. I'm like, we're not comparing the same things right now. That is a separate conversation. Right now, we are considered the most powerful country in the world, right?
Things are
we
so bad
should be.
Yeah.
Yep. We should be at the front lines of progress, period.
There's never been a woman in the White House as the president.
Exactly. But we need to set the standard. So when I try to have those conversations, it's like you are wasting your time. You got to have each conversation separately because, yes, there are things that need to be changed, but that is not, we're not over there. We're not in these other countries. They have to, there's other things they have to work on. We have to focus on ourselves, fix ourselves first, and be the leaders in progress. And then other people can try to get up to where we are. But we're not even the leaders in progress. I mean, there are other countries doing a lot of things better than we are. You know, fuel and healthcare and taxes and education and everything. I mean, there's so many other countries doing so many things. I mean, shit, we're probably not the most powerful country in the world. Come to think of it. I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah, I guess it depends on how people measure it. But
yeah, it's a fun thing to say, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you're right. Yeah, I'm certainly not trying to make that argument that it's better here than it is in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, you're dead. I know you're not. No, but there's so many people who do all the time.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard it. I've heard it a bunch. But here, it's like I follow. I would say John Mayer is someone I follow that women love. Like, I'm not saying all women, but just like I see the comments there. But the comments that I see on John Mayer's posts on Instagram are like, I love you, marry me.
Yeah.
You know, you're my boo. Yeah. You know, it's like I think that's an odd thing to say. It's maybe weird to say that, but it's not like the toxic, crazy stuff that I see men saying. Like, I've seen some really, there's violent stuff dangerous. Or just like super, I mean, graphic. So graphic and so sexualized. And I don't even want to repeat it because it's so gross. And like, I remember one time, I used to be like sort of an internet pen pal with Eliza Schlesinger before she got on Last Comic Standing. But we were still connected on Facebook when she won on Last Comic Standing. And she was at some event, and she had like a nice dress on. And I said, "Oh, you look really nice." Something tame like that. And just like a nice compliment. And she sent me a genuine post. Like she posted something like, "Jason, thank you. That is the most normal thing a man has said to me in a long time." And I was like, holy crap.
So true.
That was like 8 years ago or something. And it opened my eyes to just, I thought it was like, I had no idea that was how common it was that men were saying these weird things to women.
That's so sweet that you're so naive about that. That's adorable. I love it.
Well, I'm not.
You're just a good, normal person. You're not a creep.
I've surrounded myself with good people. So, like, this year of hearing all these, like, the Me Too stuff has been, like, heartbreaking because...
It's overwhelming, right?
It is, because, for one, it's like, I don't know... Like, the men around me do not do things and say things like that. I didn't know it was so pervasive. And then it broke my heart that it was so pervasive. So it was like, you know, like... The fact that it's just out there as abundantly as it's out there was heartbreaking. And then the fact that I didn't know it was heartbreaking as well. So it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Like, what could I have done?
The crazy thing, I mean, what a beautiful reaction too. I mean, thank you for having a decent, reaction to that, because that was definitely not, the loudest people on social media did not feel the same way. But, it's so funny to hear men say that, and funny is probably not a good choice where I don't have an amazing vocabulary like I wish I did off the cuff, but women definitely were not surprised.
Right.
Not one woman.
And I knew stuff was going on. Yeah. Yeah.
And every woman can go,
that.
Yeah. And then for you to say things like, oh, the men in my life didn't do that, which honestly, I mean, great. Obviously, you're surrounded by good people, and that's lovely. But every single woman, even though the majority of men probably in most of our life are good people, we still know a good handful of
and a
terrible,
ton
horrible,
of experiences,
awful people, and a million experiences that we could sit here. It's like there's not enough time in social media. It's like what we were saying earlier about people being tired of hearing something. I mean, whenever that Me Too thing started, we could still be doing it today. Every single day. We could dedicate every single day to a story of a time that that something disgusting happened to us in person or online or at our jobs or by a supervisor or a family member or a stranger on the street or a friend that we trusted. And none of us were surprised. Not one woman, unless she had been living in a bubble for the last 40 years, there's no way that any woman was surprised by any of these stories. Right. But unfortunately, it's not that you wouldn't fall into this category, obviously, because you acknowledge it and you know that it's a problem. But there are other people who go, well, these women are lying because I don't know anybody who would do that. I would never do that. Right. And I don't know anyone around me who would do that. So these women are lying. It's like there are billions
of people in the world.
What do we exactly? Thank you. And then what good would it do for a woman or a victim of any type to come forward and say, it does nothing but make your life harder, to come out and to tell people, hey, to call someone out for something horrible that they did.
Right.
It is so, you're literally just, you're surrendering, and you're putting yourself out there, and you're going, all right, I get it. There's going to be people who are going to hate me. There's going to be people who are going to unfriend me. There's going to be people who are going to label me negatively. This might hurt any future job opportunities I have. This could hurt anything. There is nothing to gain from coming out except for helping other future possible victims. That's it.
Right.
It makes me sick to my core.
Yeah.
All the people who immediately think that women are lying when they say these things.
And I think another thing is just and it goes back to us talking about stereotypes. It's like one of these stereotypes of women is that they exaggerate. So a lot of people, and I've even heard some women will say like, oh, it probably didn't happen like that. And it's probably just them over-exaggerating some like brush on the leg. And I'm like, listen, as I mentioned earlier, someone grabbed my butt before. There is a difference between, we've all accidentally put our hand somewhere or grazed somebody. We fucking know the difference between a grab and a graze. They're two completely different things.
Completely different things.
That's like not knowing the difference between a punch and a gunshot.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to come out and say something like that happens to you, because two things: you don't want to relive the moment again, and then you're terrified that people are going to categorize you as someone who complains about every little thing. And it's like, if I complained about every little thing, you would never not hear from me, because I would just be complaining 24/7. There are so many things that I just accept and move on and go, yep, that happens. But then there are some awful things. I mean, and here's what's funny. I said this to somebody recently, because with everything that's going on with the entertainment industry and this, the purge of all these creeps, it's like actually working in the service industry, the restaurant service industry for like 12 years, that I had worse things happen to me there on a daily basis than I ever have had happen to me. I've actually been pretty lucky. I do love doing comedy. Comedy's not super easy. No, there's a lot of no's. There's some bad things that'll happen. There's a lot of creeps who'll say stupid things to you, but I think my skin has grown really tough at this point. But nothing overtly harassing. And when I was a server, every day I walked into an environment where I was like, well, what's going to happen today? I had a grown man reach up and grab. I had to wear a skirt to work, and reach up and grab me up underneath my skirt at my table. At the table that I'm waiting on.
Of guys grabbing girls' butts and stuff. Like, I've heard of that when they were like, when I was in college even. It's like a couple of people might mention like that they worked at a restaurant and that sort of stuff happened. And so I knew it happened. And like the thing that was, and this goes back to just me saying like why I was surprised, because I wasn't surprised that anything like that was happening. I was surprised again that it was happening so pervasively, because I would see creeps out and about, but like you have to, for it to happen as frequently as it happens, and all the stuff that's been revealed this year, there are people doing this stuff.
Exactly. So when people go, nobody I know does. Really?
Yeah.
I bet that's not true.
I mean, I know my best friends don't.
Exactly. But here's the thing, is there are probably plenty of people that you don't know how they're reacting online. You don't know what they're doing under an anonymous handle.
Message they're sending,
You don't know exactly. You don't know what kind of creepy stuff that they're up to. You don't know what they do when they're not around their group of guy friends, and there's, because it's a shameful thing to do. And I would assume most people who are doing those things, they know that's wrong. So you think they're doing it in front of everybody? Hell no.
Yeah,
they are doing that secretly, privately. It's their own perverse thing. It's like the whole Louis C.K. stuff, right? It's like everybody only knew about it, really, because I think the people super, super close to him, like maybe the people working for him, like his manager and things like that, I think that they knew, and they probably...
They at least heard the accusations.
Exactly. But they knew. But then when someone came out and said something, when they knew that he was no longer in control of them anymore, or their careers were at a certain point where they could finally say something before they couldn't, which is why people wait. When everybody goes, well, if it really happened, why'd you wait so long? It's because usually those people have some sort of control over your life or your career, and you can't say anything because, like I said, being a victim is not a positive thing. It's very negative on all facets of your life and your personal relationships and your job and everything else. But it's like once women came out, then everybody knew. I knew for over 4 years about that stuff, but no one did anything about it. And here's the thing, because it's not happening in plain sight. That's why.
Right, and Mark Maron asked Louis C.K., like, what are these rumors? And he lied to his face. Yeah, he lied to Mark Maron's face.
One of his best friends, exactly. So here's, and I mean, did you watch Sarah Silverman and her speech, or her little monologue she did about it on her new show?
I love see that. Yeah.
Oh, I cried, and I watched, and that's painful. That hurts for her. That is one of her best friends, longest, oldest friends in the business, and that hurts for her to have to say. I saw the hurt and the pain in her eyes and in her voice, and oh my God, I'm crying thinking about it right now, watching her have to come out and go, you know what? This is a bad thing that he did. He did a bad thing. Do I still love him? Yes. Can both of these things exist? Absolutely. And it can. But we have to come out and we have to be able to say when something bad like that happens, you can't sweep it under the rug, because that's how these things keep getting perpetuated, right?
Yeah.
No one gets shut down because they go, well, no, it's a friend, but they're a good guy. It's like, sure, are they a good guy in these facets of their life? But over here in the shadows, they're a creepy, terrible person who's dangerous to women. Yeah, that could also happen.
Yeah.
It's like when people are serial killers or other things. I mean, just look at any other example. And everybody goes, but he was so normal. So this guy who killed everybody, killed all those people in Vegas, well, he was a normal, nice guy.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean he didn't do the bad thing.
Yeah, right.
You can also people aren't walking around with a huge sign on their chest that go, I'm a creep. I whip it out in front of women against their will and corner them. I mean, you don't know these things.
That. Yeah, nobody's going to come out and openly say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's easy to it really is, but it's a thing that people are already ashamed of. They know what they're doing. They know that it's wrong, and it's hidden. So it's not easy to sit there and pinpoint who these creeps are in the world. But trust me, ask any woman, they exist. And ask guys. I mean, and same thing that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, this happens to women a lot. It happens to men a lot. Does it happen in the gay community a lot? Absolutely. Does it probably happen at a higher rate? As just as a high rate as it does to women in the gay and trans community? Absolutely. And that's going to be the next thing, that's going to be the next purge, hopefully, and the next focus, because it happens. Yeah. And it happens a lot, and it's scary, and it's not a safe place out there. If you're out, I mean, it's hard enough being out as a woman, just to be a woman and to go out in public, well, it's by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But then to be gay by yourself out in the world, I mean, that's even terrifying. That's just as terrifying.
Listen, marginalized or trans people are, not only are sometimes violent, but at least like aggressive things are happening to women, to trans people, to the gay and lesbian community. Also, people marginalize them by discrediting everything they say or just blowing off everything they say or complain about stuff. So that's another reason why someone's not going to feel that they can speak out against it, because everyone just discredits it so frequently anyway. So just imagine that mindset, people, you may not be living that way, but imagine if at any time you said something, people just automatically didn't believe you. Like you're not gonna feel like you can do much.
You don't have a voice.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why it takes movements for people to say something, right? When and that's the thing, is people love to use that excuse is well, it can't be true because you waited so long. Well, the only reason we're here, why are we hearing so much now that none of these people said anything before? Well, it took a couple of other people to do it, to give you the strength to know that you have the numbers behind you, to know that you have something to fall back on, someone who's going to understand and stand with you in solidarity, or you need that to do it, because it's scary and it's terrifying and it's not an easy thing. And when you're talking about women being stereotyped as being exaggerating and all this, they're also stereotyped as being gold diggers and wanting to trap men and all this crazy. I mean,
that's another thing. It's like they really want it.
God,
I mean, that's what Trump said, right?
Absolutely.
That supposed locker room talk that I've never heard.
Never heard. Exactly.
I've been around dudes where it's just dudes around and they weren't talking like that.
Exactly.
We're having a great discussion and we're getting to the end of the episode. When I generally like to sort of create something here with the guest, and I like what we're talking about, and also with a little backstory for the listeners. I know personally how much you advocate for women, because when I first met you, you came to Greenville to do a show, and you're talking about why aren't there more women in the comedy scene here? And this year has made me really, all the stuff coming out has made me reflect more. And I tried when I was in Greenville in the comedy scene and booking shows and stuff. I tried then, but I'm reflecting even more on what can be done differently, what can be done better. And there were things that I missed at the time. I thought I was doing a good job because there were women who'd come out to the open mic, and for every last one of them, I encouraged them multiple times to come out again.
Good for you.
And if they didn't come out immediately again, then I was like, emailing them and saying like, please come out. Please come out.
Awesome.
And there were 2 women who it took 2 or 3 times to get them to come out again, and then they didn't stay. But I'm not saying like I'm some sort of hero, because what I missed, and I appreciate you saying, kind things about that, but what I think I missed was the overall vibe that it would have been for a woman stepping into that space, because there were 22 dudes, and a couple of them were weirdos. And a couple of them had bad vibes about them. And as a guy, my response is like, oh, we all know he's a weirdo, and we just don't think about it because we're like, he's just doing his set.
But to a woman, that guy, that creepy dude, can be danger.
Right. Exactly.
It's dangerous.
It's
a
fight or flight situation, isn't it?
Yes. Yep. It's annoying to y'all, but it's literal danger to us, like to be around it. So we will avoid spaces because of a handful of bad dudes, or one bad dude out of a whole group, right? We will just not go back because it's not worth it. And it's the same kind of thing. Maybe that guy, which we find out, oftentimes in the Atlanta scene, which is super female positive, but still the same things keep happening. A new comic will show up, a female comic will enter the scene, and she'll do some fun stuff, and then one creep will start to send her dick pics or start to send her, crazy, unsolicited, graphic messages or whatever, and she won't tell anybody. And she won't bring it up because she doesn't want to be blackballed in the community as a complainer or whatever. And so she'll just stop doing comedy.
Yeah.
And who does she tell, right? Who did she tell? Somebody who's going to go, oh, he's not a bad guy. Don't worry about it. And maybe she did. Right. Maybe she did tell somebody, and they go, oh, he's fine. And she's like, well, clearly no one's on my team. No one's going to, I'm not going to deal with this. I'll go back to improv or whatever, or just stop doing this, and then they stop.
And that's so, like you said, but that happens a lot.
All the time. All the time.
Like
the thing about the Atlanta scene.
Sad. It's really tragic, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is. But you're exactly right. But thank you, because it takes several things. It does take the encouragement, and it takes the acknowledgement of, hey, you're new and you're good, and we want you to come back. Like, that needs to happen, and people definitely need to say that to any good new comic. You want them all to stick around, even if it's new guy comics who are super insecure, or, they get out there and they've got some talent, but they're really intimidated. I mean, it's important for everybody, right? But especially to women, because it's a male-heavy place. Now, are there some women who literally don't care and who are like, I don't care, this is how I thrive. I thrive amongst a bunch of guys. Then great, that's awesome. Then comedy's perfect for you, But then there's a lot of talented people who need their voices heard but can't get this kind of stage time if it's a hostile environment. Yeah. So it takes a little bit of everything. It takes pointing out the pervs and getting rid of those people, getting them out of your scene, or at least, blacklisting them from shows. You can, as a showrunner, you can go, all right, so-and-so and so-and-so are creeps. They've been known to do some bad things. They're no longer allowed at my show. And walking up and having the balls to walk up and tap somebody on the back and go, you're not welcome here. And they go, what? Why? And you should go, you know why. And then they leave.
Yeah.
It's the responsibility of the showrunners. It's the responsibility of the peers to get rid of those people. But then on the other end, there's also that other side that you were fulfilling, which is the encouragement and the come back and the give them, welcome them, to the scene and welcome them to your shows. I mean, that's great. I mean, that is a good step. But thank you for acknowledging where you missed. But it's not your responsibility alone. I mean, it's the responsibility of the whole, right? And we all have to be, we're all responsible.
That's true. And if you're the one person trying to, I wasn't the one person trying to do the right thing, but I just mean, if you do feel like you're the only one that's trying to consider
make it better,
then that can be complicated for people, and I get that, but it is like the whole, because like if you have a room, if there's a room where the showrunner does not care about trying to make it feel more comfortable for women or something like that, then I would say screw that room. If no one go to that room, and it can't just be women saying something like, I have to not go to that room.
Yep.
And everyone who thinks that there should be, if someone's actively saying, oh, yeah, it's not a problem. Just like, if they're saying something like Don Jr. saying about a strong woman wouldn't let it happen. If they're saying something like that, then I think all the people who realize that that's stupid need to say, well, then I'm not going to do your room anymore, and let the room die and let someone else put a better room up.
Yep. But unfortunately, especially comics, I mean, it's just like every other, art. Well, it loosely defined as art, but, any other artist is like people are so desperate for stage time. And there are some people who are like, well, I'll just ignore that horrible, terrible, negative thing just so I can get on stage because that's more important to me than, making this a safer space for all comics. But if they so you're always going to have those people. So then there's always the bad people are going to go, well, people are still coming, so I must not be doing that wrong.
No,
just because they have desperate people.
Right.
They have desperate people around them. So, right. And I mean, honestly, that goes with the whole, which is kind of a different subject, but still related, which I get onto a lot of younger comics who come to me for advice sometimes, is they do gigs for free, or they'll do traveling gigs for free. And I say, don't do that. When someone asks you, can you come to my city and do this thing? The first thing you say is, I would love to. What's your budget? You have to ask, because you can't agree to a thing. I know a girl who got, or a woman who's a comic, and she had someone ask her out of town. They said, hey, are you free such and such date? And she goes, yeah, what's up? And they go, awesome, we'd love to have you on, blah, blah, blah. And then she asked about money, secondly, and then they said, oh, we don't have any. But she had already agreed to do this thing.
Yeah, so
and
she felt like she had to go through it.
Yep, because they asked if you were free. And I was like, And that's the thing, though, is it works the same way. Because of desperation, people will keep wanting you to work for free as long as there are people who are working for free, right?
Yeah.
So if you have to stop it, it works the same way on both of those, both of those levels, both of those subjects. It's like, yeah, it can thrive. A show that doesn't pay comics can thrive. Not a mic. I'm talking about a show. A show that doesn't pay comics can thrive as long as there's comics showing up. A show where the showrunner is a super creep can thrive as long as there are people who are willing to brush his creepiness under the rug and show up. It's like somebody's got to stop it.
Yeah.
At some point.
But
that's the nature of the business, and people are desperate to get on stage, so they will overlook all sorts of bad things. It's like that Alabama was willing to overlook the fact that a dude was a pedophile just for vote for their team. It's so sad what people will do.
Well, that's the thing about like villainizing the other side, right? Like when people just say like all Democrats are bad or all Republicans are bad. Then you had people saying like people who weren't even denying that Roy Moore could possibly be someone who tried to date 14-year-olds when he was in his 30s. They didn't say that's not true, and I don't believe it's true. They were saying, like I heard a number of people were saying, in response to, but he did this stuff, the response was, well, we can't have a Democrat in there.
Yeah,
that was their,
exactly.
So they were actively saying, well, it's better than a Democrat.
But
they weren't saying it's not true.
No, they weren't. But look at that's exactly word for word what happened with the presidential election.
Yeah.
The hate for Hillary is what made Donald Trump win, not the fact that he was the best or that they loved him or he was some savior for the right. It was all these people will go, yeah, is he kind of a shifty business dude? And yeah, is he probably lying about everything? And yeah, has he been really dangerous for women over the years? And he's kind of a creep and he's a moron and he can't complete a sentence. Sure. But is he Hillary? Nope.
He's better than a liberal. better than
better than a Clinton. But it's just so sad to me that people were willing to overlook all of Trump's terrible qualities just to keep her out of the office. It's so sad to me.
Well, yeah, and it's, like you were saying, it's people are overlooking bad qualities of a room or a showrunner or somebody because of what they feel they can get out of the situation. And
absolutely.
And it in the entertainment world, like people know, people in the industry know how hard it can be to get like a gig. You don't know when that next opportunity is going to come.
That's right.
Can help you. So it's hard
to
say
why
no
would you,
when it's your livelihood.
Why would you? Yeah, why would you help take down a room where it's the only room that gets you on stage? It's tough. But what it's going to take, though, is for people, however desperate, to realize what's good for the overall good of the business, which comedy is just, unfortunately, it's just that's never going to happen that way because it's a very individualistic business, right? Yeah. It's you. It's not like improv where there's a team and there's other people relying on you. Comedy, it's you against the world. Literally, when you're on stage, it's you against the world and you against the audience.
Complicated thing, yeah. I mean, but it does go back to like, should we let a monster get to be so successful? Because the truth is going to come out eventually. And do we really want them to rise to power so it can be toppled and then it affect all these other people? You know, like there are these projects of Louis C.K.'s that aren't getting made now. That affects a lot of other people. Do we really want to do that to Pamela Adlon?
That is part. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love her so much.
Right. But like she had some project, I think, with him that I don't think is going to happen if I remember correctly, you know?
Well, hopefully they do the right thing and they either just write over everything into her, you know, there's got to be some way around it. Getting another producer or something. I mean, I don't know how the ins and outs of that work because I'm not at that level.
Right.
So I have no idea, but I would hope that there's some way to keep her project going without his name attached to it. But I mean, not everyone's in the position that like Tig Notaro's in, you know, where she can come out and go, I don't need you for this. Like she can back her own things. So she can easily come out and say, you know, but not everyone's in that position, right? Like all those writers and everyone else and actors and everything that were involved in Louis' other projects, it's like, now what do they do?
Right.
They had their jobs ripped out from underneath them. You know, they're not in that position to just be able to go, oh, it's fine. I'll grab another thing. It's tough. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
don't know. It's very complicated, but it does take, at the end of the day, it takes, which is something that I would see as a super feminine quality, which is, you know, consideration and considering the people around you and looking out for the greater good than just looking out for yourself.
Right.
Not saying only women have that, but I do think it is if you were looking at masculine feminine qualities, I do think that is a little bit of, you know, the nurture aspect, the considering everyone, you know, we got to protect the brood, you know, so, but I speaking of women in comedy and all of that, that kind of led me to what my most recent project, which is
the female-only comedy class.
I
wanted to talk about that next. So this is a good way to segue into it.
Speaking of encouraging women in the business, it's like that's what I did, and you know, of course, I'm still a comic at the end of the day, so there's the individualistic side of me, the, you know, competitive side of me that's like, why the hell is as hard as it is in this business, why the hell do I want any more women to compete with? Like, of course I don't. I like the fact that it's, you know, there's not as many women as there are men in comedy. It's fun.
Because your voice is going to be more unique that way, right? But
absolutely. You know, but then the other side of me. There are a lot of women
wanting to do it.
Yeah. But the other side of me was, you know what? I'm enjoying I've got a long way to go. I've only been in the business for 6 years. I've done a lot of cool things. And hopefully, I only have good things ahead of me, right? So I was like, if I were starting out, what would I want? I would want someone who was in the business, another woman who was in the business who could show me the reins and I didn't have to learn the hard way, which they're still going to have to learn the hard way, right? Just because they took my class for 6 weeks doesn't mean they're ready to go and their sitcom's waiting for them around the corner. I mean, not by any means, but at least maybe, hopefully, out of my group of women, a handful of them will go and keep doing comedy. And what I encourage them to do, you know, the encouragement that I gave them maybe help them keep going. And now they've got each other to have each other's backs. So, I mean, they've already, I'm watching them in like this little secret group on Facebook, already planning all the mics they're going to be going to over the next few weeks, and they're going together. And I love that so much.
That's awesome.
God, it makes me feel so good because I'm like, they you know, they're going to get out there, and they're all so talented. I mean, it blew my mind. I taught it, so I opened this class. We'll back up. I decided, I was like, okay. And the other thing, as an artist, you're always kind of looking for other ways to make money. So, of course, a little bit of it was like, how could I make money with my skills? You know, so I was like, I could teach a class, and then I was like, you know what? And then the side of me that was all for women, I was like, I'm going to do it for only women. Because you know what? There's plenty of ways for men to get on stage. And so many men are so confident in themselves and their voices, and they weren't told to ever be quiet or shut up and let the other person talk. So they automatically think they're funny, and they just do comedy, right? More men take the risk of just hitting a stage and doing comedy than women do. I mean, because I think women are over-analytical, right? So And that's, for me, definitely the case. That's why it took me so long to get on a stage. I wanted to for years, and I didn't. And then I watch men who are painfully unfunny just go and keep going and don't care if they don't get laughs. They just keep going, and they'll go back, and they'll go back, and they'll go back until they finally get good. Women, it's the opposite way. Like, they don't want to get on stage until they're great, which is like, that's not how it works. But, you know, I mean, but, you know, they don't have that false sense of confidence that a lot of guys do, which helps them get to the top in a lot of ways. But anyway, long story short, when I was thinking about it, I was like, I could teach a class. I've got the time for it. I've got enough to teach. I've got a love for teaching. And I had been, another part of why I did it is I had a few female comics around town who had some who had some expendable income on the side, right? And they were older than me, and there were 3 different women, and they came to me, and I helped one fix up some of her jokes and help her write some new stuff. And then she told a friend, and then same thing happened. And then so 3 people on separate occasions, I helped them with their material and performance and writing. And then they were like, you need to teach a class. And I was like, that's a good idea. So that's what I did. And then I decided to focus just on women because I wanted a space where women, because I could have opened it up, but there are plenty of other classes that are unisex or co-ed or whatever the word for that is. And then there are plenty of men, like I said, who just hit the stages already.
Right.
But for me, it was more about, I knew if I made it women only, more women would sign up. I know that sounds silly. That sounds like obvious, but it's true though, because in an atmosphere where you feel judged, or because men will tell you left and right what's not funny. Like we were saying earlier about men just getting online and with no solicitation, just saying crazy shit to you.
Right.
So I wanted these women to be able to share their lives and not in a room where they were not being judged. Now, is that how all comedy works? Absolutely not. They will very rarely be in a situation that they were in those 6 weeks in an all-female class.
Right.
But hopefully that nurturing environment gave them enough confidence and helped them get to a point, because I feel like what these women learned in 6 weeks was what it usually takes comics to spend a year doing, right? So by the end of it, they all had a killer 5 minutes, a very strong 5 minutes that they can now take to any show and any mic, and that was my goal. And, I mean, you know that as a comedian. It takes a good year to get 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, to get good 5 minutes that you're happy with. And all of these women have something strong now, but they were able to do it because they were able to flesh out all these ideas. They were able to share the inner parts of their psyche to a group of women who they knew understood and got them. Now, if that class would have been mainly men, which most comedy classes are, then they probably wouldn't have been as open. And they probably wouldn't have been able to get out some of that super funny raw material. Because they probably didn't want to say
that's so necessary.
Yep, for creativity. I mean, there would have been things they would have avoided talking about on stage if they would have been in a class with men. And so I knew that to get the most, the juiciest, meatiest material would be because I've been around women my whole life, and I go on all-girl trips constantly with my girlfriends, and we talk about things. When you get that female energy going, and you start to share stories, and you say stuff to each other that you wouldn't. And same thing with guys, right? You just feel more comfortable around people, like-minded people who have the same experiences, and it's funny and it's more raw, and you get the best stuff. And then people censor themselves around the opposite sex,
right?
And especially women. So yeah, and we got out some of the greatest stuff in that room working, and then watching them confidently present that material to a crowd that was full of love and acceptance and support, and watching these women feel so good about what they did and then leave that stage ready to hit more stages. I mean, it was like having, watching your babies all, do something amazing. Like, it felt like it was my own children. It was so much fun to do that.
Well, that's
I love it.
awesome.
I've already got and I've already got another class signed up I already have my other one on the books. It's at the Atlanta PUNCHLINE, and it starts January 23rd, and the class is almost completely full now.
That's awesome. And then the graduation show is at the PUNCHLINE.
Yeah, I taught it at the Punchline, right? And then the graduation show got to be on the Punchline stage, which is a huge deal.
That's a huge deal. That's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the owners, which I love them, the Punchline has been so good to me over the years, and they gave me my first, like, club host work, 5 years ago, and they're just, I can't have more love for them, and which I love I really love the Atlanta scene. All the clubs have been good to me, but the Punchline's awesome, and the owner, one of the owners came in, and he came to watch the show and support it, and he came up and he was like, hey, could I get on stage and do something before? He's like, what was your plan? Are you just going to open it up and host? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, would you mind if I got up and said something first? And I was like, oh my gosh, please. That would be amazing. Thank you so much. So he did that, and he gave this whole speech to all the students first in the green room, and he told them all that when they leave here tonight, that they're comedians. And he said, so what I want each of you to do is I want you to add your names, because you can write on the walls in the green room there. And he's like, I want you to add your names to the wall among the ranks of all the other comedians, because at this point you're about to perform in front of, 150, well, more than that, like 160, 170 people. He's like, so you're about to do this. He said, so now you're comedians. And, oh, my gosh, the tears in their eyes. That's the other great thing about women. It's all the gooey, sweetness of, of like, crying and hugging and all the support. And, just everybody hugging each other after everybody said, and girls just, like, cheering and wooing. I mean, it just felt so good. But, just to watch, like, the tears in their eyes as they got to sign their names onto the wall. And then he got up at the beginning of the show in front of everybody and just talked about women in comedy, and he said he had lovely things to say about me and my class and all these women and the audience. Oh my God, that energy in that room that night was so magical that I honestly, going into it, I was like, I might teach like a class or two, and now that I'm in it, I'm like, I don't want that to be my career. I do not want to be a teacher. I want to at some point be able to pull back or at least replace myself with someone else. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to tell you, right, it's addicting. Like, that whole feeling of pride and honor to, like, have, been associated with these women in their first times on stage. Oh, man, it'll do something to you. It'll do something different. It's like, I felt so, man. But, yeah, it was a pretty magical night.
Well, that's
it was great.
Awesome.
I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait for the next one. Yeah, and I'm telling you, these aren't women who are just like, I just want to do comedy. I had a civil engineer in my class. I had a lawyer sign up. I had business owners. I had writers. I had every name, a lobbyist. I had all sorts of people from all different walks of life take my class. And the next one, because the little questionnaire they have to fill out, so I ask them what they do. And so all the women that signed up for the next one, if I thought this group was interesting, the next one is even more diverse and more interesting. And I'm like, this is awesome. Even if it's something that they only do one time in their life, it's just cool to have a space where they can say they did it.
Yeah. Well, there it is. You are awesome, Lace. Thanks for doing the podcast.
Thanks, Jason. It's so much fun.
So much fun having Lace. I hope you enjoy that and learned something from it. I know I sure did. And you can find out more about Lace on her website, lacelarrabee.com. She also has an Instagram, a Twitter, and a Facebook. So, of course, as always, links in the bio. She has an upcoming show this Saturday for those of you in the Savannah, Georgia area or surrounding area. That's a fun show, Laughs and Drafts. That's going to be going on there at the Southbound Brewing Company. She also has a couple of shows at the Aurora Theater on December 29th. So check that stuff out. Again, lacelarrabee.com. And again, links in the bio. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at There It Is Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at JasonFarJokes. And you can find out other stuff about the podcast and even donate at thereitispod.com. Well, folks, that's today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And next week we have the Comedy Shop Talk episode to finish out the year. Thank you so much. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.